Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really jumping into something pretty mind-bending. It's
Yeah.
this idea of awaken imagination.
Ah, okay. Neville Goddard territory.
Exactly, from his 1954 lecture series. And it's this claim, really, that the power to actually reshape your reality, it's already inside you.
Right. He didn't just see it as imagination in the simple sense, did he? He called it humanities, like redeeming power.
He did, which is fascinating because you think, how often do we really think clearly about imagination? Goddard felt it was super rare.
Yeah, most people just dismiss it as daydreaming or fantasy, but he connected it to these really deep spiritual ideas.
Like what, specifically?
Well, think about the second man in the Bible, the Lord from heaven.
Okay.
Goddard argued these aren't just, historical figures. They're metaphors.
Yeah.
Metaphors for this very human imagination.
And culminating in Christ Jesus.
That was his ultimate expression of it, yeah. Christ Jesus as the fully awakened human imagination.
Wow. Okay, so equating Jesus Christ with essentially our own imagination, that's probably going to sound pretty startling to some folks.
Oh, absolutely. It can be jarring if you're used to a purely historical or literal reading.
It definitely was for me when I first encountered it.
But Goddard's whole point was that maybe we've been misreading these ancient texts. We see history, biography, maybe cosmology,
Mm-hmm.
when actually they might be allegories,
Mm.
stories about this incredible inner power we all have, but we're mostly asleep to it because we're reading the manual wrong, basically.
So we've missed the point, in a way, and stayed asleep to our own potential.
That's the idea. And the core of his teaching, especially in these lectures we're looking at, is giving us a way to wake up, a practical method.
Right, and that method is the art of revision you mentioned.
Exactly. The art of revision, that's the key technique.
Okay, the art of revision. Let's unpack that. How does it work? Goddard describes it as like a daily thing.
Yeah, a daily mental exercise.
Yeah.
You basically replay your day in your mind.
From the morning onwards.
Yeah, starting from when you woke up, like you're watching a film of your day.
Okay, I can picture that.
But here's the crucial part. When you get to a scene, an event, maybe a conversation, that left you feeling, I don't know, bad, disappointed, angry, whatever.
Mm-hmm. The negative stuff.
Right. You don't just passively watch it in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
You actively step back into it, imaginatively,
Mm-hmm.
and you re-experience it, but you re-experience it the way you wish it had happened.
So you rewrite the script.
You rewrite the script in your imagination,
Yeah.
and you keep replaying that revised version, feeling it, until it feels completely real, like utterly natural to you.
So it's not just wishful thinking.
Oh.
The feeling, the sense of reality, that's the key component.
That's absolutely crucial. It has to feel real in your imagination. Because Goddard's really powerful insight here is that these revised moments, the ones you truly feel and accept as real inside, they don't just vanish.
Okay. What happens to them?
He believed they actually sort of solidify in your consciousness,
Yeah.
and then they project forward into your future. They actually change what you're going to encounter later.
Whoa. Okay. So the revised past changes the future.
In a manner of speaking, yes. And conversely, the moments you don't revise, the negative experiences you just let sit there, unresolved,
They tend to repeat.
they tend to perpetuate themselves. You keep encountering similar situations. So the idea is, don't let the sun go down on your wrath, as the saying goes, but apply it to everything. Don't let the day's negative events become final in your mind.
So even if something objectively happens, say someone was rude to me, I can go back in my mind tonight, revise that scene to them being polite or kind, feel it real, and that mental act can actually influence future interactions or outcomes. It has a tangible effect.
That is the fundamental principle Goddard taught. And he stressed that this revision has like a dual purpose.
Okay.
On one hand, yes, it's an incredibly practical tool. You can use it to achieve specific goals, get that job, improve a relationship, consciously steer your life.
Right. Manifesting, basically.
You could call it that, yeah. But there's a deeper aim, too, a more transformative one, and that's to actually awaken this inner being, what the Bible calls Christ Jesus, or what Goddard simply calls our own wonderful human imagination.
Awaken the imagination itself.
Yeah.
And what happens then? What's the shift when it is awakened?
Well, when imagination truly awakens, Goddard says it becomes the eye of God.
The eye of God.
Yeah. But it's not looking outward anymore, not primarily. It turns inward into the world of thought, feeling, consciousness.
Okay.
And there, this huge realization dawns. Everything you thought was out there, separate from you, It's actually within you,
Yeah.
contained in your own consciousness.
That's a massive shift in perception. Like reality flips inside out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It completely reorients everything. And flowing from that, you understand that all of creation, everything you experience, it has its roots in you and it ends in you. Just like, you are rooted in and end in God.
So if everything is within you, what does that mean for your purpose in life? What do you do in that awakened state?
The awakened person recognizes their purpose is basically to do the will of the Father.
Okay, and what is that will, according to this perspective?
Goddard points to the passage that if all that he has given me, I shall lose nothing but raise it up again. He interprets all that he has given me as literally every experience, every person, everything you encounter.
Yeah.
Nothing is to be lost. Everything is to be raised up.
Raised up.
How?
Every person you meet is seen as a gift, an opportunity for this raising up.
Even the difficult people,
Yeah,
the ones who seem to cause problems or pain, how are they a gift?
that's a great question. Goddard suggests that the negativity you perceive in someone else,
Yeah.
it's actually a reflection
A reflection
of your own past unrevised attitudes, your own unresolved stuff. When you awaken, you realize the source of your annoyance or displeasure isn't fundamentally in the other person.
It's in me.
It's within your own consciousness. So the real work, the raising up, is to lift that other person up within your own imagination. You revise your concept of them. You see them, feel them, as the ideal person you'd wish them to be, or the ideal you'd wish to experience from them.
So interacting with others becomes this constant mirror, showing us what needs revision inside ourselves. That makes sense. Goddard shared a story about this, didn't he? A really striking example.
He did, yeah. A very powerful case history, he called it. About a lady in New York.
What happened with her?
Well, she'd been estranged from her son and his family for 2 years. 2 whole years.
Wow. Why?
There had been a really bad argument, apparently initiated by her daughter-in-law. It got heated, and the daughter-in-law basically told her to get out and stay out.
Oh, that's harsh. And the son?
The son, sadly, felt he had to choose. He sided with his wife, Goddard said, to keep the peace in his own immediate household, even though he still loved his mother very much.
Gosh, that must have been devastating for the mother. 2 years of silence and rejection.
Absolutely devastating. And Goddard points out she carried that hurt, that anger, that sense of rejection with her. For 2 years, she let the sun go down on her wrath, so to speak. She hadn't applied this principle of revision to that core wound.
She was just living with the pain, the objective fact of the estrangement.
Exactly. But then, something shifted.
What was it?
She heard Goddard share another example of revision working for someone else. And apparently that story just clicked for her. It hit home. So she went home that night, really determined to try it herself. She knew that for 2 solid years, the mailman had brought nothing from them. 0 contact. So she decided to focus her imagination right there.
On the mail.
On receiving mail. That Wednesday night, she sat down and mentally, in her imagination, wrote 2 letters to herself.
Okay. What did these imaginary letters say?
Well, one was supposedly from her daughter-in-law,
The one who kicked her out.
the very same one. And in this imagined letter, the daughter-in-law was kind, warm, saying how much they missed her, asking when she could come visit. A complete turnaround.
Wow. And the second letter?
The second was from her grandson. Much simpler. Just expressing love, "Grandmother, I love you," and saying he wanted to see her. The very things her heart longed to hear.
Right. The exact opposite of her current reality.
Precisely. And she didn't just quickly imagine them, she memorized the wording of these 2 mental letters.
Memorize them. Okay.
Yeah, then every night for a week, 7 nights straight as she was drifting off to sleep, that receptive state,
Yeah.
she would vividly imagine holding these letters, feeling the paper, and she'd mentally read them over and over, soaking in the feeling of joy, relief, love, acceptance that came with them. She lived the experience of having received them.
She fully embodied that revised reality in her imagination. For 7 nights.
7 nights. And then what happened?
I'm on the edge of my seat here.
On the morning of the 8th day, she went to her mailbox, and there was a letter from her daughter-in-law.
No way.
Inside that envelope were 2 letters, one from the daughter-in-law and one from the grandson.
Okay. But were they?
Here's the kicker. The actual words in those physical letters, they mirrored almost exactly the sentiments, the phrases, the feeling of the letters she had mentally constructed and emotionally inhabited for those 7 nights.
That's unbelievable. That story really drives home the potential power here.
It really does. But it's interesting, Goddard mentions that when he told this story, some people in his audience actually had a kind of negative reaction.
Really? Why? What was their issue?
They sort of questioned, well, if we have to write our own letters, essentially,
Hmm.
if we have to internally generate these things, does that take away the joy of life, the spontaneity?
I can see that. Like if my friend does something nice for me, I want it to be their spontaneous idea, not something I had to secretly imagine first. It feels less genuine, maybe.
Exactly that concern. They worried about losing the beauty of unexpected kindness, feeling like everything becomes this self-generated thing rather than a lovely surprise from the outside.
That's a really valid point to raise, isn't it? That fear of losing genuine external spontaneity.
It is understandable, absolutely. But Goddard draws this sharp distinction. He talks about the sleeping man versus the awakened individual.
Okay, sleeping versus awakened.
The sleeping man believes completely in an external world that operates independently. Things just happen to him spontaneously, good or bad.
Right, that's the default for most of us, probably.
Probably. But the awakened individual, through practice like revision, comes to realize that everything they encounter, every person, every situation, is somehow a projection of their own consciousness. It's all part of them, even if they don't consciously recall creating it or see the connection immediately.
So from that awakened view, even this seemingly spontaneous nice thing my friend did ultimately originated somehow within my own state of being.
That's the implication, yes.
Yeah.
Goddard suggests the awakened mind understands it has, in a sense, authored every scene, which, as he admitted, sounds, well, he said, bordering on insanity to the purely rational mind that believes only what the senses report.
Because it just completely flips our usual understanding of cause and effect, of inside versus outside.
Completely. The sleeping person gives ultimate authority to objective facts, to the out there. But the awakened perspective claims the absolute supremacy of imagination. What matters most isn't the external fact, but the intensity and feeling of your imaginative act. That's the true reality.
He uses that analogy, doesn't he? Truth standing silent before reason. Pilate and Jesus.
Yes, a very powerful analogy. He equates truth with awakened human imagination and reason with Pontius Pilate.
Okay.
When Pilate asks, what is truth? Jesus' imagination of truth says nothing. Goddard interprets that silence as imagination can't be justified or explained by reason. It operates on a different level. It is. What reason sees is just a subjective idea like, my friend is kind. Awakened imagination experiences as an objective reality. The friend is kind because that's the imaginative reality being held.
That distinction is crucial, an idea versus an embodied imaginative fact.
Exactly, and that brings us right back to revision as the practical tool. He defines it as the active voluntary use of imagination.
As opposed to
passively just accepting appearances, accepting the no, accepting the rudeness, accepting the limitation as final. Revision says no. I actively choose the ideal I want to experience, and I impress that onto my consciousness through feeling.
like the grandmother did with the letters.
Precisely like she did. But the suggestion is to do it daily, with anything that feels off, for potentially much faster results across the board.
And this inner work, this imaginative laboratory, it doesn't need the same kind of external proof that, say, science demands.
Well, he draws that parallel with Einstein, which I find fascinating.
Oh yeah, how so?
Think about Einstein's equations in 1905. EM, seesaw, all that. Groundbreaking stuff. But for years, science couldn't actually prove them empirically. The tech wasn't there.
Right, they were purely theoretical at first.
Purely theoretical, derived from imagination and insight. Yet eventually they were validated and totally changed our understanding of the universe. Goddard implies our own imagination is like that, this immense fundamental power that shapes reality, even if we can't always prove it with external instruments immediately. He loves quoting Einstein. Imagination is more important than knowledge.
So the real challenge, the real invitation here, isn't just to understand this intellectually.
No, not at all.
But to actually apply it, to test it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He urges people, take a specific situation, your job, a difficult boss, that raise you want, something concrete, and apply revision. Feel the desired outcome as if it's already real. And crucially, disregard the facts that say it's impossible. Ignore the limitations your reason throws out.
He gave another example, didn't he? The pilot in San Francisco.
Yes, that's a great one. This pilot, loads of experience, loved the sea, but union rules, seniority, meant he was stuck on routes he didn't want. He couldn't sail where his heart wanted to go. It felt like this totally fixed external limitation.
A very real-world problem.
Very real. So Goddard told him, use your imagination, lie down, close your eyes, and be on the ship, sailing the route you want. Feel the deck under your feet, smell the salt air, hear the engine, feel the rhythm of the ocean. Immerse yourself completely in the feeling of being there.
And did it work? What happened to the pilot?
The amazing outcome was, yes, he eventually did start sailing those desired waters. Regularly going down to Panama, I think Goddard said, legitimately, within the system somehow. Things just rearranged themselves.
So it wasn't like the union rules magically vanished?
No, not necessarily. But the imagined state, persisted in, found a way to express itself in the outer world. It showed that those external structures don't have the final say if your inner conviction, your imaginative reality, is strong enough.
It opened doors that seemed locked.
Precisely. Even something simple, like someone tells you no. You want something, they say no. Goddard says, go home, replay that scene, but hear them saying yes, enthusiastically. Feel the relief, the gratitude.
And
then often, opportunities open up. Maybe they change their mind. Maybe someone else offers it. Maybe a different path appears. The inner shift changes the outer landscape, often without you needing to manipulate or force anything.
it's like you're changing the underlying pattern.
You're changing the imaginal pattern, which he believed was the cause of the outer effect.
He also had that interesting phrase, our outer comforts, our beliefs, are like toys for sleeping man. What's the idea there?
I think he meant that when we're unawakened, we put all our energy into chasing external things, possessions, status, approval, clinging to rigid belief systems. These are the toys that occupy the sleeping mind.
Okay.
But the real goal, the adult work, you might say, is to wake up, to shift our focus inward, to realize that the power to create our experience isn't out there, it's in here. It's about awakening that Son of God within, the second man imagination, and letting it lead rather than the sensory-driven first man.
And this awakened state, this commitment to revision, it has spiritual implications beyond just getting what you want, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Deeply spiritual. Goddard said the awakened person starts living in heaven now. Not after death, but now. Because as you revise your day, every day, you're consciously creating a more beautiful, harmonious reality, first within, which then projects outward.
He connects it to transfiguration.
Yeah, that potential for metamorphosis.
Yeah.
Moving from being this limited sort of contracted self into becoming like a flourishing tree in the garden of God, a state of inner expansion and beauty.
And this blossoming isn't just about me, myself, and I, is it? It involves others.
Critically involves others. Because when you practice revision on your concept of other people, when you lift them up in your imagination, seeing their potential, forgiving perceived wrongs, imagining the best for them, that act simultaneously causes your own inner blossoming. He ties it back to Isaiah giving beauty for ashes, joy for mourning, praise for heaviness. These are acts of inner imaginative transformation applied to your perceptions of yourself and others.
So helping others in imagination helps yourself.
It's reciprocal. It's fundamental. He also used that image from Daniel, the felled tree.
Right. What was that about?
He saw the felled tree as symbolic of humanity falling into unawareness, forgetting our divine imaginative power. We got cut down from our true potential.
But the roots remain.
But the roots remained. Our core imaginative faculty is still there. And through the dew of heaven, which he interpreted as dawning awareness, understanding this principle, the tree can consciously regrow. We can awaken to our true nature and power. Revision is like watering those roots.
So every single person we meet, they're here for a reason, part of this process of redemption or awakening.
That's how he saw it. Everyone is given to us for a purpose, to be raised up in our own consciousness. Revision is the tool. By revising our concept of them to match an ideal, we fulfill the golden rule, doing unto others imaginatively as we would have them be unto us.
And that act changes everything.
It shifts your whole perception of reality. You move from seeing an objective world out there that you react to understanding a subjective reality, where the world is, in a profound sense, hung upon oneself. It's all flowing from your own state of consciousness, your own imaginative activity or lack thereof.
This has been, truly a deep dive. Awakened imagination, the art of revision. It's a perspective that really turns things on their head.
It does. It challenges our most basic assumptions about reality, but it also offers this incredible sense of empowerment, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The potential for real change, both inner and outer. It moves you from feeling like a victim of circumstance to potentially being the conscious creator.
Indeed. It's a powerful invitation. Step out of just passively receiving experiences and step into consciously shaping them through your own amazing imagination.
So on that note, maybe a final thought for everyone listening to really chew on.
Right.
Think about something that's really bothering you right now, a persistent challenge maybe, or even just a nagging memory of an unpleasant interaction you had recently.
Yeah, got one.
Yeah, I think so. Now, what would it actually look like? And more importantly, what would it feel like if you were to really fully apply this art of revision to that specific thing right now? Feel the revised scene, feel the resolution, the ideal outcome, and then just consider what new possibilities might start to open up, not just for that one situation, but for how you understand your own power to actually shape your world from the inside out.